There are things that, when you read them in a script, you automatically know the writer is an amateur. And it's not that if you do these things one time in your screenplay, but if there is a pattern, if you have a tendency of doing them. The reader just automatically knows you aren't ready for the big time. Well, at least the first three. The last one, we're going to start with the two easier ones you can avoid. Well, the two that you can more easily recognize, and then we'll get a bit more advanced. The number one thing to avoid writing in your script: pleasantries and dialogue. And this one's fairly easy to spot. It looks like this. The home phone rings, Jim answers. Hello? Hi, Mr. Higgins, it's Gus. Oh, hi, Gus. You looking for Lucy? I am. Is she home? Sorry, Gus, she's out with Walter. Can I take a message? And the reader is all yawning wide enough for a bus to drive through. I realize that's how some really polite teenage boy might talk to the father of a girl that he's interested in, but that makes for boring scenes. Pleasantries have no place in a script unless they're serving a story beat, but 99% of the time, no story beat. So get rid of the pleasantries. Consider this. The home phone rings. Jim checks the caller ID, answers. Hey Gus, how'd the Lakers do last night? Same as always, Mr. Higgins. Is Lucy there? Out with Walter. Can you tell her I called? Only if you stop rooting for the Lakers. That's already way more interesting, and this is what a lot of writers get mixed up. They think, oh, no pleasantries, so I'll just have them jump into the argument or whatever. No, you can still have banter, but it has to be serving something else. You learn more about Jim and Gus's relationship in the second set of dialogue. It's the same number of lines, but it's a lot more information. And that's why pleasantries are bad. Not because they're just boring, which they are, but because they don't reveal character. They're generic. They're bland. We don't want bland. So if you've got pleasantries, you have to modify them. If dialogue isn't revealing character or moving the story forward, dump it. And that includes pleasantries. So if you can't think of what to do, yeah, get rid of it and just jump in. So instead of Janice pokes her head into Hugo's office, got a minute? For you, anytime. I wanted to talk to you about the Braxton account. Change it to Janice barges into Hugo's office. Why'd you give the Braxton account to Billy and not me? Skip the pleasantries if they aren't helping. You can find a better way. Advanced writers, they always find a better way. The number two thing you shouldn't include in your screenplay: describing actions that we have done 1,000 times. Okay, another way to think of this is telegraphing the action too much. Here's what I mean. Gertie parks her car in the driveway, shuts it off, gathers her belongings, gets out of the car and locks it. After closing the door, she heads to her front door, digging for the keys in her purse. Finding the keys and then the correct key, she opens the door and before it closes is kicking her shoes off, glad to be home. No. How many times have you gone into your house? I honestly have no idea how many times I've walked from my car into my home. And everyone in the audience, and especially anyone who is reading your script, has done this 1,000 times. It's just Gertie parks the car, digs for keys, opens the front door, and before it closes, she's kicking off her shoes. The audience fills in the blanks because we've seen that and we've done that a gazillion times. So if your characters are doing actions that the audience has done a lot, or that you have done a lot, just hit the highlights and move on, unless there is an important story beat in the midst of that, like Gertie not noticing the black sedan parked across the street. But now that moment is different. Different is fine. Same is bad. So if the action is something that your reader has done a lot, hit the highlights and move on, like I'm moving on. The number three thing that you should not do in your screenplay is over-describe the setting. I have a question for you. Are you the screenwriter or the set designer? That's what I thought, the screenwriter. So stop trying to do someone else's job. As a screenwriter, your job is threefold. Craft a compelling story, tell it well, and make the reader emotionally respond to the story in the way you want them to emotionally respond to the story. Telling someone about the Victorian windows on the second floor is not a way to get them to emotionally respond. Well, at least not to emotionally respond how you want them to. They don't care. Are the windows even important to the story? Probably not. It's a house in suburban St. Louis. It's gonna have windows. I guarantee it. You don't have to describe them. That kind of description is what novelists tend to do, although the good novelists are not overbearing with it. They do it in really great subtle ways. Screenwriters, though, We are about economy, and amateur writers write a screenplay like they're writing a novel, probably because many of them have taken some kind of short story creative writing class, and that's what the teacher said was good writing, describing everything in detail using flowery language. And I'd argue that's not good writing in any medium, but that's another video. In screenwriting, we are not describing the types of dishes on the counter or the fact that the curtains used to be white but are now barely a shade above ecru beige. We want to evoke emotion, not describe the china. The kitchen is a wreck, dirty dishes, cockroaches, and what is that smell? That's all you need. We're evoking emotion, and that gets at the emotion. Let the set designer figure out what kind of dishes and what color the curtains are, or if there are any curtains. So don't over-describe a scene. Here's a good rule of thumb. If it takes you more than 3 lines of description to describe a setting, that's probably too many. Most writers I know aim for 1 line. The 4th thing you should not include in your screenplay, and this one is hard to not do. I guarantee you're doing this in your script. And if you're doing it once or twice, it's probably fine, but I've never seen a script from a new writer that does this once or twice. If you're doing it, it's everywhere, and it's this: directing the actor. Here's how this normally plays out. You, the writer, imagine the scene. You see the setting very clearly. There's a couch, a TV, a recliner, doorway into the kitchen, and Pablo and Stephanie are arguing, and they are going at it. And Stephanie's in the recliner and stands up and points a finger in Pablo's face. He's not having that, erupts off the couch, pillow in hand, swats Stephanie's pointing finger away, and now her face is all, "Oh no, you didn't." And Pablo's all, "Oh yes, I did." And Stephanie's like, "Talk to the hand, I'm done with you," and she storms into the kitchen. But Pablo leaps over the couch to block her path, and you're totally directing the actors. I realize in your head you aren't. You are just writing the scene as you see it, as you've envisioned it. But here's the first problem. No one can see the setting in your head like you do. And the more you direct the actors through this imaginary space that you've invented, the more confused the reader gets. But that's not the worst of it, because before you were trying to do the set designer's job, but now you're trying to do the actor's and the director's job. Let's review what your job is again: to evoke emotion from the audience. So the argument is great, but how it plays out in your writing, not so much. It's fine to have the big swings. Stephanie's in the recliner, Pablo's on the couch, but he says the way wrong thing, and now she's in his face, and he's right back in hers, and probably says some other way wrong thing like, "Just calm down," which, if you aren't aware, them's fighting words, and she's leaving the room, and we're still getting the gist of what's going on, but there's no directing. All we're doing is evoking the emotion and expressing that emotion. Now the actors have something to act, and they don't feel like they're tied to some specific action, which they're gonna just yank out of the script anyway if the director hasn't already done it. If you're not sure what directing actors is, think of it like this. If you are trying to control the actor's movements like a puppet master would control a marionette, they walk here, they sit down, they stand up, etc., you're directing the actors. So if you're writing things in your script like, he winks, she smiles, he gets up, she sits down, he crosses the room, she puts on her shoes first, then her dress. Okay, you're directing the actors. Stop it. Your job is to evoke emotion. And it's not that you can't do those things, but you can't do them a lot. If you do them, you have to make them count. They have to be there for a big time story beat or a big time character beat. Maybe you're pushing the story forward. Maybe you're revealing something about character. Those are fine. But if you aren't doing one of those things, do not direct the actor. And if you aren't sure what I mean by the difference between story beats and character beats, you should probably watch this. If you found value, comment about what was helpful. Don't forget about all the fun buttons below. And whenever you tell a story, be sure to tell a story that matters. See you later.